Hello there, I'm autistic, and this is A Case of Autism. See, if I was based, I would have actually just gone with my original idea, which was talking in the Inkling, Octoling gibberish, and just have the letters of the logo switched out for their Inkling counterpart. I have no idea what the name of that language is in that game, but unfortunately, one, I don't want to scare off anyone, and two, I'm lazy. So, Marina, am I right? Since Splatoon 3 is nearing its end, considering that the content updates are seemingly going to come to a halt, I think it's more than fair to look back at a particular one of the residents of that universe and go, hey. And of course I'm talking of Marina from Splatoon 2 specifically, but she does show up in the DLC for Splatoon 3. According to the wiki, her full name is Marina Ida. I believe that's how you pronounce that. She is one half of the pop idol sensation Off the Hook. The other half being Pearl, which I will explain in just a moment as to who she is, so don't you worry about that. I promise it's relevant. And was also a host for Splatoon 2 in the newsroom. I don't know what you call that. Just like once you boot up the game. She's just one of those pop idol characters. There actually has been some light discussion back when the Side Order DLC came out of her being very much autistic coded. And I found it an interesting discussion, so I decided, fuck it, man, I'll talk about her, I guess. She is definitely a fan favorite character for no particular reason, and honestly, I also tend to really like her for no particular reason. For real though, she actually is a very endearing character, and I do very much like what they've done with her in these games. Like, the writing on her is like super tight, but you can say that about most of the game anyway. So, let's analyze Marina and see what exactly has people theory crafting what makes her autistic. For me, I think the most prevalent thing to discuss about her in relation to this is how she is very hyperfixated on a lot of things, some of which we will get to later, but for now, it's worth discussing her obsession with media. More so, her ability to excel at multiple forms of media. And I'm not saying just like, oh, she's an artist. No, I mean she does like so many fucking things. Like, she is a Swiss Army knife of a character. She's just a very creative person in general. Not only does she make a living off of making banger-ass music, but she also does art. Again, I'll get to that art in a moment. Like, I know I'm putting off a lot of things, but trust me, there's a whole section for this. Just trust me on this. She does art, like, relatively well, too. Like, she doesn't, like, skimp out on details or anything. Like, she is actually really good at illustration. And on top of that, she also, in canon, lore-wise, is the one who created the shifty stadiums for the Splatfests in Splatoon 2. Do you know how insane it is for a single individual to construct an entire stage to do battle with? I guess maybe in the Final Fest she didn't necessarily make it, more so just kind of repurposed it. But that's besides the point. Fact of the matter is, she does a lot. And that's not even talking about the memverse, by the way. She is a skilled programmer. Like, exceptionally. I cannot understate the actual capabilities of this individual character and what she is able to accomplish on her own, let alone with a team of other Octolings, which helped her make that said memverse. If you do not know what the memverse is, basically the holodeck from Star Trek, aka VR. It's basically the metaverse as it's advertised as opposed to what it actually is. So yeah, I think it's fair to say, she is very much talented in multiple aspects. Not to say that the exact level of talent is replicatable, but a lot of people, and this also bleeds into ADHD as well, so some people could also, like, interpret her in that way, but it is a common trait that a lot of people with autism, or like I said, ADHD, tend to not be satisfied with just one hobby or one passion. They spread their love to like as much as they can and just pick up multiple different habits, hobbies, or what have you. It just so happens that Marina excels at everything, so it kind of worked out. I would not be surprised if she sucked at laundry, though. My next point that I want to talk about is interesting. The thing that got a lot of people considering her autistic was, interestingly enough, the rap battle song that they had with Fire and Ice, aka 2/3 of Deep Cut, aka Shiver and Fry. There was a section where Marina went head-to-head against Shiver. And Shiver was kind of like backhandedly like, oh, like, you remind me of like my neighbor's little sister or something like that. And it was meant to be like a jab of like I said, it's backhanded. It's meant to be like, oh, you're so like adorable, like you're just a child, blah blah blah, you're just doing what other people are doing. And it's very easy to interpret it like that, right? However, Marina responds with, thanks, you're not too bad yourself. This leads into my next point. She's just socially oblivious. A lot of people chose to interpret that section of the rap battle as she didn't really pick up on the fact that she was insulting her and was just treating it as a compliment off, which is really funny because like a lot of people interpreted that as like Off the Hook kind of won that spat because like a lot of reasons, I'm not gonna get into it now, but one reason was like Marina's so pure, she like dismantled the insults by just like taking everything as a compliment. I actually disagree. If anything, I think the people who said that kind of outed themselves as being autistic, if I'm gonna be honest, because the way I chose to interpret that was that she very much was also trying to play backhanded. Like she was being like sarcastic. She's like getting on her level. I could absolutely be coping with that. I'm not going to deny that, but at the same time, like I can't help but imagine, like that's how I first interpreted it. Granted, she is absolutely socially oblivious, so I do not blame people for making that assumption. There are times where some people would say things about her and she just like doesn't get it or like misinterprets what they were saying. I remember there's a very memorable thing of like in Splatoon 2 where like her co-host mentioned like, oh, I went this place with my best friend like all the time, and Marina was just like, well, I don't remember going there with you. Like it's stuff like that that's like kind of cute, but she just like didn't necessarily pick up that she was not the one the other was talking about. I don't have any like else off the top of my mind, but I know they're there. I'll try to look for some. Otherwise, yes, she absolutely does not pick up on like everything. I will defend that bar though. I will defend that bar. Like I think she was very much aware. She was just playing into it. So as it turns out, as I was making this video, Nintendo came out with some interview in quotation marks with all of the idols, and in it was pretty much confirmed that no, she absolutely did not understand what was really going on. But if anything, that just gives me credence for my theory going forward, so if anything, I can't really complain. I guess she really was never sassy in the first place. Huh, Nintendo. I don't think I need to explain how that is a symptom of ASD. It very much is a case of, we just kind of don't pick up on everything, I guess. But now, finally, I could talk about probably the strongest form of evidence, in my opinion, that leads to this line of logic, and that is that Marina is gay. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, no shit, but what does this have to do with anything? Well, would you believe me if I told you that it turns out that for a majority of people with neurodivergency, they also tend to fall under the LGBTQ plus umbrella. I am now going to subsequently prove that she is gay. So give me a moment. I am now ready to introduce Pearl. Pearl is the second half of Off the Hook. Both Marina's business partner and, most likely, IRL partner. And I don't even think of it as like a one-sided thing either. Like, I do believe there's like genuine care on both sides. Mostly because in the Side Order DLC, Pearl does explain how when, like, I guess mild spoilers for that, when she was hooked up to some machine, she was scared, oh my god, she liked that permanently. Like, she was genuinely scared for her. Like, she deeply cared. And that's just one example, but I'm not here to prove that Pearl is gay. I have plenty of evidence to prove that Marina is. So I shall go forward with that. It's never explicitly said that Marina has a crush on her at the very least. But there's multiple signs to point to the evidence that she absolutely fucking does. The most obvious is just the way that she talks about Pearl. All the flowery language, she just gets so giddy and like, there's so much with the body language and facial expressions. Whenever she talks about her, she thinks Pearl is the literal coolest thing to ever exist and can never be topped. She thinks that Pearl is like, unequivocally, the single most, I cannot emphasize this enough, she's legit smitten by anything she does. And the funniest thing is that with what canonically Pearl has been able to accomplish, it's kind of warranted. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's definitely played up. But when you are able to beat a rhythm game that goes at 888 BPM, that is not something to just hand wave away. Like, she is single-handedly responsible for the finishing blow on the final boss of both DLCs for Splatoon 2 and 3. And that's only scratching the surface of what kind of character we're talking about here. And again, this is like the most surface level sort of thing to explain, oh yeah, she absolutely loves her. Like you can put this away as just like an overly expressive friendship sort of thing, but like, canonically speaking, it's also apparent that Pearl is the first person that she met when escaping the underground. There's your Undertale reference, I guess, for the day, I suppose. But, like, legit, like, she lived in what is referred to as Octarian society, who are cast underground because they lost a war, blah, 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 lore and all that shit. But, like, she escaped the underground after a big battle that happened at the end of Splatoon 1. She was inspired by the music that played, so she left for the surface world in order to find why that music was so amazing. And the first person she runs into is Pearl. And it pretty much escalated from there. All I'm gonna say is that it's very easy for you to, be very thankful and have a high attraction to the first person to take you in and accept you into a brand new society. Especially one that you're, like, so passionate about, right? I see all you weebs out there. And if somehow you're still not convinced, you don't just put someone as your desktop wallpaper unless you have a deep infatuation with them. Like, that's not something you do! But to put the nail in the coffin for real, though, I have a surprise little bit of show and tell for you. This is the Splatoon manga. So, if you did not know, there is an ongoing Splatoon manga. Well, there's multiple Splatoon mangas, but this is like the basic one. It basically follows the adventures of like Team Blue, which make up goggles, glasses, bobble hat, and headphones. And if you couldn't tell, all of the characters in this series are named after the gear that they wear, which is real gear that you can wear in the games. I'm not here to talk about that. What I am here to talk about is something very special that was included in the very end of Volume 10. Now, the series of manga, this series of manga specifically, is all written and illustrated by, I apologize if I'm butchering this pronunciation, but I'm going to attempt my best, Senkichi Hinodeya. While he is responsible for all of the art in the actual mangaka, he does, however, sometimes receive GIF illustrations to include from the Squid Research Lab themselves, aka the art team behind the actual games. In this case, it was specifically Seita Inoue? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I believe that's who did the illustration for what I'm about to talk about in particular. I'm assuming, because there was a thank you from the previous... This guy thanked this guy for the artwork. So I'm assuming that was the one who did the illustration specifically. But the way that they went about, like, talking about it was the Squid Research Lab, and this is the direct quote on one page, by the way, the Squid Research Lab has secretly acquired a manga written in Inkling language. And the manga in question is credited to Marina Ida. And it is called Dear Pearl. This is it right here. After that cover, there's really only like 5 pages of illustrations and writing, I suppose. But to give a brief... I'm not going to show it all off here, because I would... if you're very curious, I would genuinely recommend getting the manga itself. I'll show off pieces and whatever, but it's very important to know that the way that this manga is like illustrated, because keep in mind, Marina drew and wrote this, right? This is like a part of that like talent in other fields that I was talking about, but at the same time, it also emphasizes the fact that she is infatuated with Pearl. Like, even ignoring what's written, right? Like, I don't even need to tell you what's written. You kind of get an idea of what is written there. It's just, Pearl is so cool, and I wish I could be just like her. But what I want to point out specifically is the way that she depicts not only herself, but also Pearl. Look at the way Marina draws herself as this sketchy-looking klutz that can't keep it together. Meanwhile, Pearl is always, like, beautifully handsome. I don't even know how to describe this. And is, like, constantly shown with, like, beams of light, bubbles, flowers. Like, for anyone unfamiliar with mangaka tropes and general visual language, I guess, that just happens to perpetuate in the most generic form, honestly. Like, in a lot of different stories and artists. Like, whenever someone is depicted in that way, whoever's perspective we are seeing that through, they view that person as, like, quite literally the love of their life. Like, the most beautiful, most attractive, sometimes even handsome if it's a guy. I think, like, with the way that Pearl's kind of drawn, like, she kind of views her in that way, which is really funny. I think it goes without saying, Pearl is absolutely another hyperfixation for Marina. This is not just a friendship, right? She has friends, like Oct and 8, and even, like, Captain Cuttlefish, for example. Those relationships do not compare. She has friendships. She has connections to people. Not like she does with Pearl. Nowhere near as much. Now, there's only one possible reason why you would still be suspicious of that. Because they never outright technically say it. And it's Nintendo. They're probably queer baiting anyway. They're trying to, like, play to both sides or whatever. And to that I say, are you fucking stupid? Okay, let me be clear. I get it. Multi-billion-dollar company, your first instinct, I totally get that. However, Nintendo, despite their weirdly old-fashioned conservative business decisions, is actually, at the very least in North America, very accepting of the LGBTQ+. I didn't even know this before, like, very recently, actually, at least as far as this recording goes. I don't know how long it's going to be till I get this done, but apparently, like, Nintendo has shown support at multiple Pride parades. I'll try to find, like, visual examples, but, like, they pretty much say, like, yeah, play is for everyone. And in multiple games, including big sellers like Pokemon, they've pretty much dropped the entire focus around picking a gender when it comes to any form of character customization. Now, I kind of thought that was just on the basis of the Splatoon games, because while in the first game, and I believe also in the second game, you were able to pick a designated gender, in Splatoon 3, you were able to drop that completely. You just kind of pick whatever hairstyle you want, which could be either of the genders. It's only species locked. But also, regardless of that, you're able to go about giving yourself titles that could be to either gender. The reason I thought it was, like, originally mostly delegated to the Splatoon devs is because they were also the ones responsible for the most recent Animal Crossing game, where they also kind of just didn't acknowledge gender at all. But no, this actually has been, like, a prevalent thing within modern Nintendo, where they've just been dropping the notion of gender to just let you play as whatever you want. Some time ago, I played Pikmin 4. It was my first time playing a Pikmin game ever, and it was also the first game to give you a customizable player character. There was no gender in sight. Again, with Pokemon, there is a little bit of it. So, like, it doesn't tell you that whatever form you pick is a masculine or feminine one. It just basically lets you pick whatever you want. And while gender isn't necessarily brought up, the headmaster still refers to you as either lady or master. I believe it's lady or master. I know for the guy it's master, which threw me off. I'm like, why is he calling me that? Turns out in, like, Spanish-speaking territories, that's just kind of how you say, like sir or whatever. It's like an equivalent, which was interesting. But other than, like, that one character, it never really does get brought up. I think the importance is just dropping it from the character select screen in general. And while, yeah, technically, like it was their way of, like, displaying the character was being polite, and that's more so to do with multilingual bullshit that I'm not going to touch at this moment. My point being is that the fact that they were able to go about it the way that they did was honestly, like, really cool. The franchise, known for picking between boy or girl, is dropping it. So no, I do not believe that this decision is a cynical corporate one. I genuinely think that Marina is gay, and it is purposeful. And no, I do not believe it to be queer baiting. Especially considering that this is coming from the same game where, within the DLC where it is even more prevalent, they introduce a non-binary character. Oct is exclusively referred to with they-them pronouns. Even characters you wouldn't expect, like Smollisk/Overlorder and Cypher, who are referred to by its pronouns, not because they don't have genders, but because they are literal programs in a computer. something 6 months. So they are not afraid to have more accepting representation in their games. They're just also courteous enough to not make it a centralizing character trait. Like, you can say a lot of things about Oct and their personality. One thing that you can't really say is a defining factor of their character is that they're NB. Like, is it an aspect of them? Sure, yeah. But it's not all they are. There's a lot to them. And I really liked that. It's this weird balance where it's like, you want the representation, but you don't want it to be like the character that reaches for that quota. I believe that the way they handled the relationship between Pearl and Marina was perfect. I mean, like, look at this! This is not a thing that friends just do, right? Like, am I I'm not crazy. They are gay. There is nothing more obvious than that they are gay. It is purposeful. They just don't shove it in your face. Splatoon fans have said this for a while, but these deniers would still be denying it if Marina herself turned towards the camera and went, yes, that is right. I am gay and in love with Marina in a sexual manner. Unfortunately, that would affect the ESRB rating, so they hadn't been able to go through with it yet. But you know, there's a chance. One day. I swear to God, there's going to be an Easter egg where they legit get married and they will still be coping. One day! I can only dream. Anyway. Another bit of evidence that I wanted to point out, which I didn't think of until after recording, was the outfits that they decided to give her, at least in Splatoon 3, and specifically during the seasonal festivals for some reason. It turns out there's a bit of queer coding within her outfit choices, which, again, goes to depicting her as such without explicitly doing so. I'm not going to claim to be an expert on queer fashion, or I guess lesbian fashion specifically, but regardless, it's worth bringing up. More specifically, I'm referring to the outfit where she has fishnets on her arms that connect to 2 fingers. I saw a tweet mention that that's a thing apparently. I was unaware of that. Their reasoning was what the fingers are used for, classy. But one that I picked up all by myself because I'm very smart was the one for the summer festival where both her and Pearl have matching earrings on the same side of their tentacle hair stuff. And I know about the gay Ken doll. Okay? And yes, I knew that before watching the movie. That's really all I had to say about that. Thank you. Yeah, I've proved that she's gay, and therefore, because of all of the other factors mentioned, there is legit evidence to dictate that she can easily be interpreted as autistic coded. And now, as I always try to do, it's time to analyze, does this work as positive representation? Just like how, you know, they don't overtly spell out, oh yeah, this character's gay. Do they function in the same way for being an ASD coded character? My verdict is complicated. I don't want to be put in a position where, like, I'm downplaying a headcanon, right? But at the same time, TLDR, I think that interpreting her under this lens comes with risk. A very common stereotype for autistic individuals is that they are superhuman geniuses and excel at a lot of very smart things. I like to imagine myself as being intellectual to an extent, but I can tell you right now, I'm no chemist. I am not a mathematician. I used to be pretty good at math, but the moment I didn't have to do any of it for school, like, one ear out the other. Like, so, Marina being the character that she is complicates things. While I do think that she is a very endearing character, and is, in my opinion, a very positive representation for the gay community, the nature of her intellect is one that makes me hesitate to call her autistic. Not because autistic individuals are incapable of doing that, but because of the stigma that would leave behind. She's not only talented in multiple forms of creation, whether that be music, illustration, and construction, but even for Octarian society, a society that values intellect and serving the society like a hive mind, she is seen as, even amongst that society, an immense step above. It is because of her capabilities as an individual that their society was able to advance to a specific point. Now, is she solely responsible for all of their advancements? Of course not. Like, that'd be ridiculous even for, like, that fictional world. But it's been made very prevalent that she has helped with advancements far beyond what they could have done without her. She is that smart. This goes beyond any sort of like Rain Man comparison where they're just like able to do quick math in their head or whatever. She is like actually like innovative. Do you understand how dangerous of a precedent that sets? The way that I like to display this sort of stereotype is through Savantism. It is, without question, the most common form of stereotyping there could be for autistic individuals, which I have discovered myself through my own research. While it is technically plausible to assume Marina to be autistic given what we have discussed today, I believe that it still runs the risk of perpetuating the savant stereotype for a lot of autistic individuals. Which is why I am conflicted. If you choose to believe her to be that within her own headcanon, I implore you, please, do not think of that to be the case for all autistic individuals. And if you believe her to be autistic because of that, then I implore you, please reevaluate how you see autistic people. Because while we may not be stupid, we are not all savants. That got a little more heavy / dramatic near the end than I was hoping, but there's not really much I can do to help it when discussing something like this. But I suppose there's nothing more I can do other than ask your own opinion. Let me know in the comments, like, do you believe her to be autistic? Do you believe her not to be? I am genuinely curious as to, like, a conversation around this, because while I do think that she as an individual is very exceptional, I really do not want people to come under the assumption that it's because she happens to be autistic. Like, yeah, sure, it helps with excelling with creative thinking, as I've discussed before, but there's a limit. If I were to interpret her in that way, I choose to believe that she is smart irrespective of it. Her being autistic is inconsequential to her vast intellect. She just happens to be creative and smart. So, there you go. But otherwise, I think it could be dangerous. There's not an easy answer for me. So definitely let me know what you think. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I have some other videos where I talk about other characters that you might be interested in, and if you don't see any that you might want me to talk about, then let me know, and I might take it into consideration. Hello, before I go, one last thing. If you'll take a look at this screenshot, you'll notice, pay no attention to the pro char in the corner. You'll notice that Marina is looking directly at the camera. Now, is this a fourth wall break? Most likely, yes. However, considering the context that we find ourselves in, Agent 8 is probably just like looking at the menu off screen or whatever, and Octa's just doing whatever. But in this specific scenario, Marina finds herself staring directly at the camera. Now, what does this mean? It means she's staring off into space, which is a thing that people with autism do a lot. I'm just saying, if I wanted any more proof, I have it right here. There you go. That's my linchpin. But yeah, once again, thanks for watching. And remember, woo me.